On August 29, 1984, 751 people were poisoned at 10 different restaurants in the small city of Dalles, Oregon. No one died, but 45 people were hospitalized. Welcome to the basic facts of the Rajneesh Cult. Zorba the Buddha. Rajneesh was born Chandra Mohan Jain on December 11, 1931 in India. Rajneesh is supposedly a nickname he was given as a child, in which Sanskrit means Lord of the Night. While growing up, Rajneesh not only held an interest in yoga and meditation, but also hypnosis and the occult. Sometime in the late 1940s, Rajneesh joined the Indian National Army, but he left shortly after, later stating that he didn't agree with their ideologies. On March 21, 1953, Rajneesh claimed he became enlightened, comparing himself to Jesus and Buddha. He stated his mission was now to create a new man, which would be called Zorba the Buddha. This man would combine spiritual needs with material needs. He claimed this man was the only way to stop man's self-destruction. Meditation classes. Rajneesh attended college and was able to obtain a master's degree in philosophy. This led him to seek a teaching career in philosophy. He taught at Raipur Sanskrit College in 1957. At this time, he began to give public lectures on his beliefs, which included capitalism, materialism, meditation, and that the first step to enlightenment was free sex. Free sex to Rajneesh was based on the idea that marriage was bondage, especially for women, and that having children made people prone to dysfunction and destructiveness. Rajneesh also spoke out against Gandhi, explaining that Gandhi was a masochist reactionary who worshipped poverty. These lectures attracted wealthy businessmen who sought advice from Rajneesh, and in return would give him money as donations. But these lectures also caused Rajneesh to lose his teaching job at Sanskrit College because the vice chancellor considered Rajneesh's teachings a danger to his students' morality, character, and religion. In 1962, Rajneesh took his interest in his advice and began to give 3 to 10-day meditation classes for a fee. Encounter group therapy. It was around this time, while Rajneesh was in his 30s, that he began to show symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome, which not only caused fatigue, it also caused him to have recurrent low-grade fevers, the inability to stand for normal amounts of time, insomnia, body aches, and extreme sensitivity to smells and chemicals. By 1970, Rajneesh was living in an apartment in Mumbai, India, where he began to accumulate groups of devoted followers. To become a devotee at this time, you had to devote yourself to seeking enlightenment, the way Rajneesh taught it, and change your name to a Sanskrit name. But former members have stated that Rajneesh would make female members strip down completely naked in front of him, then he would proceed to have sex with them. But Rajneesh stated it wasn't sex, he was feeling their chakras. It was also at this time that Rajneesh met a woman named Sheila Patel, who would become one of his most devoted followers. By 1974, Rajneesh had obtained enough followers and money to open the group's very first ashram. Rajneesh was also able to move out of his apartment into a luxurious estate in Pune. But the group began to draw criticisms after a former member came forward about a dangerous form of therapy Rajneesh was performing at the ashram called encounter group therapy. The man explained that the group therapy session allowed a degree of physical violence and sexual encounters. His personal experience with this therapy had been him locked inside a room for nearly 8 hours with other members who used wooden weapons on him, which resulted in the breaking of his arm. By 1979, after enough criticism from the public, the group released a statement that they would no longer conduct encounter group therapies. Wasco County, Oregon. With the investigation into the group's encounter group therapy, India's government found that members were either resorting to prostitution or drug running in order to be able to afford to stay at Rajneesh's ashram. When denying foreign visitors to India who were listing the ashram as their destination as a means to end the crimes being committed didn't stop it, India revoked the ashram's tax-exempt status and demanded nearly $4 million in back taxes. Rajneesh and his closest devotees, including Sheila, began looking for another place to host their ashram. In June of 1981, they moved to New Jersey under the guise that Rajneesh was needing life-saving surgery for his illness. The group stayed at what is known as both Kip's Castle and Monk's Castle in Montclair, but very quickly members from before were showing up in droves, and the castle wasn't big enough to be the next ashram. Looking for a bigger place to live, the group was able to find a former ranch that was for sale in Oregon. The ranch covered 64,000 acres and cost the group around $6 million. It was later realized that the majority of that money came from members, some having paid in excess of $500,000. By July of 1981, the group began to build their compound at the ranch, which they would later call Rancho Rajneesh. The compound becomes a city. By this time, Rajneesh had taken a vow of silence and didn't show up at the compound until August 29, 1981, where he mostly secluded himself in his personal house. As the compound was being built and added onto, locals in Wasco County constantly filed lawsuits against the group, trying to stop them from building in Oregon. Members of the group claimed in the lawsuits that the locals were being religiously discriminatory. The group continued to build on the ranch while lawsuits were tied up in court, with the majority of the money coming into the commune from courses and workshops that they ran through what they called International Meditation University. Courses ranged from $60 to $7,500 per course, and workshops ranged from $90 to $3,500. Members were also easy to spot by locals because it was a rule that they wear colors that evoked the sunrise: orange, red, purple, and pink. They were also told to wear a necklace that bared a photo of Rajneesh himself. One of the more controversial teachings that was allowed at the compound was called sexual freedom, where adult males were encouraged to have sex with underage females. Rajneesh explained this as people should be able to act on all of their sexual desires to allow themselves to acknowledge their primal energy. Members were also expected to work 12 to 15-hour days with only a half day off every 2 weeks. Their payment for their labor was being near Rajneesh. Although Rajneesh was mostly isolating himself on the compound, he would do one daily drive around in one of his 93 Rolls Royces to allow members to have a glimpse of him. By 1982, the commune consisted of a shopping mall where they used their own Rajneesh currency, a medical clinic, nightclub, fire department, some restaurants, an airstrip, barns, greenhouses, a 300-seat cafeteria, and an unlicensed casino. In May, the Oregon court system allowed the group's compound to be declared a city. They named it Rajneesh Puram. A hotel bombing. Along with the compound becoming a city, the courts also allowed the group to establish their own court system and police force, as well as giving them the ability to tax members. During all of this, Sheila, Rajneesh's top advisor, was telling members that Rajneesh was making a nuclear war prediction that would happen in 1993. thus the reason the city was conceived to help members survive nuclear war. But a former member has stated that this was just a fear tactic to recruit more members. Rajneesh also predicted that AIDS would kill 2/3 of the world's population. After achieving city status, the group began to branch out and set their eyes on a small town in Wasco County called Antelope. During election time, the group was able to fill nearly every electoral position in Antelope, angering the locals. Locals either left the town or sold their homes and property to the Rajneeshes, dwindling the population from 200 to 45. After taking over Antelope, the group set their eyes on Portland, Oregon, and built a hotel there called the Hotel Rajneesh. But in the summer of 1983, a bomb exploded inside the hotel. No one was killed, and till this day, it's unknown who planted the bomb. The poisonings. The Rajneeshes believed it was one of the locals that bombed their hotel, so they set up guard posts with armed guards around the commune as well as Antelope. They called these guards the Rajneesh Peace Force. When a commissioner election was coming up in 1984, and both candidates stated that as soon as they were elected, they would have the Rajneesh dismantled, the group came out that they would run in the election and take over Wasco County. The group decided to bus in over 3,000 homeless people, get them to register to vote, but then the voters were turned down when it was believed that the group was fraudulently voting. The homeless were eventually kicked out of the Rajneesh and left on the streets in Oregon. On August 29, 1984, 751 people were poisoned at 10 different restaurants in the city of Dalles, Oregon. No one died, but 45 people were hospitalized. It was soon found out that Sheila and members of the Rajneesh group had carried out the attack in hopes that enough people would be so sick that they wouldn't be able to show up for the election, but it didn't work and the group lost the election. Rajneesh is deported. When the police began to pursue the Rajneeshes for the poisonings, Rajneesh broke his vow of silence and began to blame Sheila for all of what had happened, and that he knew nothing of the poisonings. On September 13, 1985, Sheila and a few other members fled Rajneesh. Soon after, Rajneesh himself would flee the city as well. When the police searched Rajneesh, they not only found that the group had a hit list of 9 people that included elected officials in Oregon, but they had also found that Sheila had wiretapped every room and building in their city unbeknownst to members. On October 28, 1985, Rajneesh was arrested at an airport in North Carolina where he was trying to leave the United States. Rajneesh was charged with immigration fraud and was given a 10-year suspended sentence due to a plea bargain that stated when he pled guilty, he would be deported and barred from ever returning to the United States. Rajneesh was deported in November of 1985 and returned to India. Rajneesh bankrupts. Sheila was later apprehended in West Germany in 1986. She was charged with various crimes ranging from attempted murder and wiretapping. She pled guilty and was sentenced to 20 years in prison at a federal prison in Pleasanton, California, but she would only serve 2.5 years, being released for good behavior. She was immediately deported after her release. She would end up in Switzerland. Several other top aides were prosecuted with similar crimes as well. By 1986, the city of Rajneesh, with all of its top officials gone, fell into disarray. Members who stayed began to liquidate everything, including Rajneesh's collection of Rolls Royces. The city filed bankruptcy and eventually sold to a billionaire who in turn gave it to the Christian Youth Young Life Ministries, who use it as a Bible summer camp. Rajneesh dies. When Rajneesh returned to India, he changed his name to Oso, a name usually reserved for Japanese high priest. Many former members and members from Oregon came back to the ashram in Pune to continue following and worshiping their guru, but many stated that Oso was not the same. Former members have stated that Oso had said his teachings on reincarnation were a lie, that Oso would randomly pass out, and that his speeches, which were now on tape, were ramblings and mostly anger towards the United States and Sheila. On January 19, 1990, Oso died of heart failure. He was cremated. The ashram in India still exists today. It's now known as the Oso International Meditation Resort and still teaches all of Oso's beliefs. As for Sheila, she is still living in Switzerland today, where she claims to have recordings of Oso confirming all the plans the group carried out, including the poisonings. But whether or not you believe Oso is involved with the illegal activities, you now know the basic facts of the Rajneesh Cult. Thanks for watching.